This thing was just getting on my nerves. It was almost like, screaming at me, like, me, take my picture, take my picture. It was just like, shut up already.
I mean, I have to admit, I am a real student of black and white photography.
I just like the process. I don't need to see my work right away. I mean, I take a picture, I really don't care about it anymore.
I was naked in some coverage, but I also stripped down in the audition. And I said, I'm sure everybody is going to do this. And he said, no, you're the only guy that's done it.
I've had the rare opportunity to meet many amazing photographers who move through the different landscapes to create powerful images. I'm always inspired by how these images transform the way we see people and understand the world. A great photograph needs no explanation, but on Capture, these incredible people tell the story of creating their most memorable images. I'm Mark Seliger, and this is Capture.
Hi, I'm Mark Seliger, and welcome to Capture. On today's show, we have Thomas Haden Church, the Academy Award nominated actor.
Nominated.
Well,
I got to the
nominated is good, right?
Yeah.
And we also have Ed Keating, great photojournalist and a great friend of mine, and we're very pleased to have both of them today. So Ed, I've known you for a long time, since we met when I came to New York in 1984, and we always talked about photography.
When I started taking pictures, I had, I'd bought a camera in '81, and I had, it was just a fluky thing. I just gotten a tax refund, and I had, $400 burned a hole in my pocket, and I just saw it, thought I'd buy myself something, and so I walked out of the camera store, put a roll of film in the camera, and just started shooting. And so the street, I just walked out onto the street with a new camera and started taking pictures on the street, and that's...
Like, you just all of a sudden said, I'm going to start taking pictures on the street, and that was it?
It wasn't a conscious thing. That's just how it started, and then I just found that I just continued, just kept going out in the street to take pictures. And then I'd go, then I started trying to pay attention to photography. And then it was the street photographers it was their work that I connected with and identified with. So, and so on the street, you run into everything, that's where you just meet life head on.
I'm from Texas, and I know it's a long way to either California or New York. How did you get out of Texas?
My college career was petering out in the mid-'80s, and I was going to North Texas. But I took some acting classes there, and then I had a film teacher, a screenwriting teacher. He said, you should consider doing some voiceover work. Let me set you up with my agent in Dallas. I met with the agent, and she sent me out to meet on a movie, and I ended up getting cast in the movie. That was in 1988. And it was an LA casting director, and I went back to Dallas and was just gonna continue my life. And the guy kind of found me after we had wrapped, and he said, look, I've got some footage, and I'm going to show it around, but I think if you have any way of getting to LA, you should maybe take a shot. And I moved to LA in January of '89, slept on a buddy's couch, and got cast in a TV movie 4 weeks later, and made more money in 4 weeks on shooting this TV movie than I think I'd made in the previous 4 years. And that was it.
That's why I said I'd love to be an actor. I mean, what you guys do, it just knocks me out. I'm so stuck in my own skin and who I am. It just sounds so exciting.
I always think about when I see this picture of Ed, take a peek. This was kind of a great moment, I think, where you were initiated into the great world of photojournalism.
This incident with I was freelancing at the Times, and there was a riot in Crown Heights, and it was certainly the most heated, thing I had run across up to then. The Times, had an opening for a staff photographer, and it had been, I was basically, I was in May or June was told that, it was my job to, that I was going to be the guy, and then in the typical Times fashion, you know, just took forever and ever and ever. So this was in late August. So it spilled some blood, and I got a fruit basket from Max Frankel, the editor the next day. Big thing from Dean DeLuca. Then they still waited another 2 months, and then they finally took me on.
I mean, I have to admit, I am a real student of black and white photography, and I'm completely fascinated with photography.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And I never got into it when I was a kid, and I'm ashamed. Like, you know, Jeff Bridges puts out these books, and all the way back to Picture Show, you know, he's got these beautiful images.
And very talented.
Oh, really a good shooter.
Immensely. Do you have any?
I do, yeah, I collect photography.
When you say you collect, are you interested in like certain photographs?
I mostly collect Western photography from different periods. And then I also have a lot of Western, like original Western art, and but
it's really now it's become so, you know, photography's become so homogenous because everything that, you know, you carry on you has a camera on it. So what you do is really becoming its own place because it's still traditional photography.
Well, the more the world's gone digital, the more I've, you know, recommitted to black and white. Sometimes I feel like I'm a sort of a one-trick pony, or, you know, I've never gotten past, you know, just shooting black and white reportage. But I just think that as time goes on, it will become kind of rare and rarer. Fewer and fewer people can do it.
You are familiar with shooting celebrity.
A little bit.
When I looked through some of your photographs, you had a picture of Mick Jagger, right, that you shot.
did you blow that up in a dark room and everything?
No, the negative fell on the ground and behind my desk, and I picked it up, and then a month later I found it behind the desk again. So I decided to leave it there. So it sat on the floor behind my desk for 10 years, and then I picked it up and brought it to the lab and had them print it.
But you kept finding that negative on the floor, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it kept kicking around.
Just on the floor, you just kept these.
Yeah.
Just like, well,
it's
going to look better over years.
No, it's still back there. Now it's been around 25 years.
It's still back in the back of your desk?
It is, uptown, and I have to, so it's time to reprint this.
Film kind of has the ability to just put away and come back and look at it, and it has a whole other reference to where you were and who you are now. And when you were directing your movie, you said that was your first real directorial moment?
Oh, yeah. My movie, which is called Rolling Kansas, it was the most humbling experience for me because I scribbled down what I thought would be a good pitch on a legal pad and went in and used things like, I'm going to get a Swiss jib, and that way I can get some better high angle stuff. And, he just really kind of made shit up. And they said, fine, great, go, you're the guy then, you're gonna direct, now go crew up. But to precisely answer your question, it was now in 25 years of doing this, it was, as a professional actor and as an industry professional, it was the most complete experience for me. That I framed shots with my DP, I operated the camera, and to this day, I run into people and they're like, it was one of the best experiences because you were always a team player. You were willing to pick up, whatever, battery packs and move. I mean, and not to sound like a blue collar guy, born to lose tattoo.
You immersed yourself completely in the experience.
I did.
And that helped make that experience incredible.
I just like the process. I like the process. I don't need to see my work right away. I mean, I take a picture, I really don't care about it anymore. I'll eventually get to it. I have about 175 rolls of film, unprocessed at home right now. I mean, I'll get to it.
Dating back how far?
Probably about a year, some of it. I like the act of photographing. I mean, I love the pictures when I finally get around to it. But to me, I like photographing. I like going out in the street and photographing.
There's, when we were talking, I was thinking about how, people that make things and go and they create their photographs, and you really are, your photographs are all about sort of, I think, intuition. And, everybody has interesting experiences for 9/11. Everybody has their story about 9/11, how it affected them, where they were. And yours is probably one of the most interesting.
Being so far uptown, they sent me to hospitals. So I spent the first day, trying to go to hospitals, and it was day 2 that I really got on the story, and tried to get on the site, and couldn't get in at day 2. By day 3, freelancers had been getting their pictures in the Times on the front pages, and I didn't panic. I just said, this is, I have to get in this. I got to get on this site. I'd been sneaking into places, my entire life. So on the 3rd night, I finally kind of broke through and got in just as a construction worker, and, with a hard hat and the boots and all that. And so I spent the night there that first night, and was able to do it again the following night and the following night. And then there was a big assignment that came in, and since I had already been on the site, more than anyone else on the staff, then I was given this assignment where I had basically the only sanctioned journalist down there, for 5 days, which was one of the days that I was able to get you in.
This picture is it has a certain, obviously, sadness to it, and the story helps to kind of bring that out, but it's a still life, and it's very atypical of the kind of a photograph I would expect out of you. Describe what you saw when you walked into this location in...
Well, first off, 9/11 was such a unanticipated surprise event that, before I really started photographing down there, I literally just paused and I tried to think about, what are you going to do in this? What would you like to do in this assignment if you had a choice? If you could come up with one great photograph, what would it be? And I just thought that since the event was so anticipated and such a surprise, that the picture that I would pull out of this, if I could do it, would be a surprise for me, a kind of a picture that I couldn't anticipate. And so I'm in this apartment, facing Ground Zero, and there's girders. I mean, the whole place is turned upside down. You were there, you saw it, and yet in the middle of the room sat this tea set that was, virtually, was unscathed. And I walked past it once and looked at it, and it was just like, it's like, look at this. And then I kept walking, and then I'd be crisscrossing through the apartment for like 2 hours, and finally, and without taking a picture. And this thing was just getting on my nerves. And it was almost like, screaming at me, like, me, take my picture. And I just was about to leave, and it was time to go, and I took 2 or 3 frames. And it was just like, shut up already.
I wanted to ask you where you were when...
The aforementioned movie that I directed, we were in pre-production in Austin, Texas, and people already in the studio 2,000 miles away were starting to cry because there just was this ominous, something has changed. It's not an accident. And for me personally, the man who was my mentor when I was on Wings for 6 years, a man named David Angel, and his wife Lynn Angel had become very close friends of mine and my girlfriend at the time when I was on Wings. And they were flying from Boston to attend the Emmys in Los Angeles, and they were on the jet that hit the first tower. So I dedicated Rolling Kansas to David and Lynn. It's just my way of sort of saying goodbye to them, to the people that were in my life that were a part of the tragedy that affected our country.
And somebody who changed your life.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that story. That was incredible,
Oh,
Thomas.
thank you.
Did you have any experience in terms of like what you knew about Route 66? That's everybody's fantasy, is like to take a camera and go on the road and do a road trip. And
I was on the road, kind of drifting on the road before I had a camera. So
you were a little bit of a. What was that like? Where were you then?
Well, I'd driven cross country in ~77, kind of lost and drunk, and and in fact, Texas was a big challenge for me. I was running out. I went down to Galveston, and then I wound up in Amarillo on 66. But my challenge was to get across 66 without buying a gun, and because everybody had a gun.
So you were in Amarillo. So to get across the Panhandle.
Yeah, and then I went straight from Amarillo to LA. And it wasn't until, 12 years later that I wound up actually doing it again, with a camera. And I think there is a theme in my work of if it's loneliness or alienation.
But you know what I mean by there's like this sense of totally being invisible. Like this would be the greatest moment in like a Mike Leigh movie. And did she know that you were there?
Oh, right after that picture she did, and then
is that when you started dating?
That's when I had to run for my life. I mean, she became very agitated.
Oh, she did?
Oh, you took a picture.
Well,
it could have been the same picture in Crown Heights of a couple people carting you off. It's funny because you were talking earlier about being a chameleon and kind of falling to the situation. So when you say a chameleon, I mean, do you literally like dress and change and morph into whatever situation you're walking into?
When I'm dealing one-on-one with somebody, I will unconsciously or subconsciously just sort of tailor my sort of speech and my body language, and I just try to become someone that they're just like totally comfortable
Right,
with.
it's like you're their best friend. It's funny because when you connect into Sideways, when you first start to get into the characters, you realize it's like these sort of antithetical partners in crime. How did you and Paul find each other's rhythm to be able to just completely sync like that? I mean, I think that's what makes that movie so memorable and so lasting, is that it's the greatest friendship ever told.
Rehearsal, initially rehearsal, but Paul Giamatti and Alexander connected us once we were both cast and we knew the movie was going to get funded, which there wasn't a challenge there because it was Alexander Payne's next film. And people were lining up. They weren't lining up for the duo of Paul Giamatti and Thomas Haden Church, but they were, they were like, "Are you sure not Clooney and Pitt? You want Giamatti and Church?" But
how did you land that? The story I heard was something about you appearing naked in front of the casting, so I heard a much different story.
Yeah, I was naked in some coverage, but I also stripped down in the audition.
Yeah.
In my second audition, the first one we just met and talked. And then the second one, he said, I'm narrowing it down and I do need you to read. And I said, that's fine. And I stripped down naked in the audition. And whenever I was putting my clothes back on, and I was completely embarrassed, that I'd maybe gone too far. And I said, I'm sure everybody is going to do this because the character is naked in the scene. And he said, no, you're the only guy that's done it. And so I thought, oh, okay, then that means I'm the stupidest guy that's come in, or I'm just like the most desperate. But yeah, I didn't see any other way to do it. I didn't know how to play that with your clothes on.
Okay, guys, very, very quickly, what we do here is this is called fishbowl. These are pretty random questions. I think we'll start off with you, Thomas.
Sure.
Go ahead, just dip right in.
If you could have one photograph on your wall, what would it be?
Oh, one photograph on my wall. It would be a photograph of At Jay's, one of At Jay's alleyways. It's my favorite photograph. It's a composition, it's squares, it's windows. I don't have the title of it, but it would be an At Jay photograph.
I actually own my favorite photograph. I got an Arnold Newman photograph when I had enough money, finally, when I moved out of being an assistant, which was the Stravinsky picture. Yeah, and that was like the first photograph I saw in college that made sense to me when I was taking a documentary portraiture class. But at least I hung onto that image, and when I could afford it, I bought the image.
You ready? What is your favorite place to take pictures?
Probably on my ranch. It's a beautiful part of Texas. It's right at the headwaters of the Medina River, but just below where we are, the town nearest me is Vanderpool, which is just a little community, but there's the confluence of the Medina and Sabinal rivers is just below where my ranch is, and it's just beautiful and rugged, and I'm not so much a wildlife photography guy, but I love seeing the indigenous wildlife that's there, but also just, my ranch headquarters was built in the early 1900s, and I've really maintained, through reconstruction, the authenticity of it. And I just love the imagery. I like living on a Texas ranch that, You know, if you remove my trucks, and I've looked at like the tableau of the headquarters of my ranch. If you take my trucks out of the picture, it looks pretty much the way it did in 1905.
Incredible. What are the best or the worst things about the proliferation of camera phones?
Oh, I'd say one of the worst things is that people tend to just photograph things instead of kind of looking at them. I mean, I'm at the Museum of Modern Art last week, and everyone is standing, 8-10 feet from Starry Night, and they're posing in front of it. But no one's really taking a look at it. So what I do is, I can't get close.
Right.
So it's like, screw this. So I just go right up, and I'm like 2 feet away from it.
Right.
And I'm blocking their view. But it becomes a substitute for like just really looking at something. You take the picture of it, and you never really look at it. They never really look at the picture. Even, it's like a click slideshow. People, they just go through boom, 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 boom. So I think there's something about really witnessing things, personally.
I have a pretty dark view of them. I quite frankly hate them because you can take like Ed just described, if everybody's taking a picture of the water lilies or of, a boy leading horse, or any great Picasso or any great Rauschenberg, if everybody can take a picture of it, and then you go home to your children or your grandparents or a friend of yours that's, not well, and you're like, yeah, here it is. Yeah, it's really cool. Wow, it's really pretty. I'm just gonna pat through that, and there's some puppies, and oh shit, this is what happened to my truck the other day in the parking lot. I gotta turn that into my insurance guy, and you know what I mean? I don't know.
It all kind of melts into some weird world.
It's just a graying, to me, and maybe I'm an asshole, but it's the graying of a brilliant art form.
Well, Thomas Haden Church, thank you so much. Great having a conversation with you.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm looking forward to your next photography book. and my dear friend Ed Keating, Pulitzer Prize winning photographer Ed Keating, thank you so much for coming, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, brother.
And so I walked out of the camera store, put a roll of film in the camera, and just started shooting. And so on the street, that's where you just meet life head on.
I'm completely fascinated with photography, and that's the truth.
And did she know that you were there?
Oh, right after that picture she did, and then that's when I had to run for my life. I mean, she became very agitated.
They weren't lining up for the duo of Paul Giamatti and Thomas Haden Church. They were like, are you sure not Clooney and Pitt? You want Giamatti and Church?
Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant,
I'm Eric Ripper.
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman,
the host of On the Table,
the host of Across the Board,
Host of Artist Talk,
Host of Hooked Up,
host of the show Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend on the Reserve channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. Check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedbacks, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's like down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.